Welcome back to Season 2 of CyberSpace. We're excited for another year of understanding our world. I'm your host, Leslie Poston, and today we're diving into a phenomenon that's as old as civilization itself, yet remarkably relevant to global current events: how extreme wealth and power transform the human mind. Picture this. You're suddenly elevated to a position of immense power and wealth. Every door opens before you even reach for the handle. Your opinions, no matter how casual, can shift markets or change lives. Your smallest decisions affect thousands, sometimes millions. Sounds incredible, right? But there's something happening beneath the surface. Something that research is only now helping us to understand. Your brain is literally being rewired by this power, transforming not just what you can do, but who you fundamentally are. If you were born with this level of wealth and power, your brain has had a lifetime to be fundamentally changed by it, and potentially the brains of your family for familial wealth were transformed this way as well. Today we'll explore how this transformation happens, how often it happens, what it means for society, and why understanding it matters more than ever in our age of increasing wealth concentration. We'll look at cutting-edge research that reveals how power and wealth reshape our neural pathways, alter our decision-making processes, and fundamentally change how we relate to others. More importantly, we'll examine what these changes mean for our collective future. Let's start with what happens in the brain when someone acquires significant power. Recent neuroscientific research reveals changes in neural activity patterns among powerful individuals. When people rise to positions of great authority, their brain actually begins processing information differently. The neural pathways governing empathy and social awareness undergo substantial changes. What's particularly interesting is how these changes manifest in behavior. Power holders often experience what researchers call moral licensing, a phenomenon where they begin to feel they've earned the right to break social norms or ethical guidelines, simply because of their position. This isn't just about making different choices. It's about fundamental changes in how the brain processes moral decisions. The empathy networks in the brain, those crucial circuits that help us understand and relate to others, show decreased activity in powerful individuals. Think about that for a moment. The very position that gives someone influence over others' lives actually reduces their neurological capacity to understand those lives. The neuroscience reveals something even more interesting. Power actually changes the physical structure of the brain. Research shows altered activity patterns in the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for emotional regulation and decision-making. This region becomes less responsive to social cues while showing increased activation during dominance-related tasks. At the same time, the brain's reward systems become hypersensitive, leading to an almost addictive relationship with power itself. What's particularly noteworthy is how power rewires the brain's threat detection systems. Studies show that powerful individuals become hypervigilant about threats to their status while simultaneously losing the ability to accurately assess real risks to their organizations or to others. But it goes even deeper. Research shows that power alters our perception of risk and reward, changes how we process feedback, and even affects our ability to mirror others' emotions. These changes occur gradually but inexorably as power accumulates. The brain adapts to its new status by prioritizing dominance-related behaviors over cooperative ones, leading to what researchers call power-induced blindness, a reduced ability to see things from others' perspectives. The implications of this are profound. As individuals gain power, they become less able to recognize or respond to emotional cues from others. Their ability to read facial expressions diminishes, their capacity for perspective-taking decreases, and their tendency to interrupt or dominate conversations increases. It's as if the brain reconfigured itself to handle power by becoming less sensitive to the very feedback mechanisms that could help temper its influence. Extreme wealth often comes with or leads to great power. When we add extreme wealth to this power equation, the psychological effects become even more pronounced. Research shows that billionaires often develop what's known as the dark dyad, a combination of narcissistic and psychopathic traits that emerge as wealth accumulates. This isn't suggesting that wealthy people start out this way. Rather, the condition of extreme wealth itself appears to nurture these dark characteristics. The evidence is particularly striking when we look at real-world examples. Consider how often we see billionaire CEOs making decisions that seem disconnected from human impact. Consider the recent case at United Health, where leadership implemented an AI system to systematically deny millions of healthcare claims, resulting in numerous patient deaths. Or look at how Jeff Bezos requested an entire town destroy their historic bridge just to accommodate his super yacht. Actions that demonstrate how wealth can lead to increasingly dehumanized decision-making and to entitled behavior. Take the case of mass layoffs announced via casual tweets. These aren't just cold business decisions. They're manifestations of reduced empathy and increased psychological distance from others. The psychological changes go beyond just decision-making. Researchers have found that extreme wealth often leads to what they term hubris syndrome, or a pattern of behaviors characterized by extreme self-confidence, contempt for others' advice, and loss of contact with reality. This helps explain why we often see wealthy individuals pursuing grandiose projects or making statements that seem completely detached from a normal human experience. Something else to pay attention to is the way wealth changes the way billionaires process information about themselves, as well as others. Studies show that as wealth increases, individuals become more likely to attribute their success to internal factors, their own skill, their own intelligence, or hard work, while simultaneously attributing others' failures to personal deficiencies rather than to circumstance. This self-serving bias isn't unique to the wealthy, but it becomes dramatically amplified with extreme wealth. The research also reveals a troubling pattern in how billionaires approach problem solving. Their increased sense of control and decreased empathy often leads them to favor technological or market-based solutions to social problems, even when those approaches may be inappropriate or insufficient. This tendency to see all problems through the lens of market solutions or technological fixes reflects a kind of cognitive narrowing that comes with extreme wealth. One of the most insidious effects of extreme wealth is the creation of what psychologists call the isolation bubble. Unlike normal social isolation, this is a peculiar form of psychological quarantine where the wealthy person is constantly surrounded by people but almost never experiences a genuine human connection. This isolation has measurable effects on personality and behavior. Studies show that within this bubble, the ability to accurately assess social situations deteriorates. The wealthy begin to view their success as purely the result of their own merit and completely overlook the role of circumstance, privilege, and assistance from others. The isolation bubble also creates a dangerous feedback loop. As wealthy individuals become more isolated, they tend to trust fewer people, which leads to even greater isolation. Their social circles become increasingly limited to other wealthy individuals or paid employees, further distorting their view of normal human experience. What makes this isolation particularly pernicious is its invisibility to those experiencing it. Unlike traditional loneliness, which people generally recognize and might seek to address, the isolation of wealth often goes unnoticed by its victims. They're surrounded by activity, attention, and apparent connection, but these interactions are increasingly filtered through the lens of wealth and power dynamics. The psychological impact of this isolation manifests in various ways. Research shows that wealthy individuals in this bubble often develop heightened paranoia about others' motivations, increased difficulty in forming genuine friendships, and a growing inability to distinguish between authentic relationships and those based on their wealth. This leads to a kind of emotional numbness that can further reinforce the very behaviors that create distance from others. Another fascinating aspect of wealth and power's influence on the mind is how it affects risk management. Research indicates that powerful individuals become more likely to take risks, not because they're naturally more daring, but because power actually alters how the brain processes potential consequences. This increased risk-taking behavior isn't limited to business decisions. We see it manifest in personal behavior, political decisions, and social relationships. Wealthy individuals often display a pattern of ignoring expert advice. Believing their success in one area makes them experts in all areas. This helps explain why we sometimes see successful business people making catastrophically bad decisions when they venture into politics or social policy. The research shows that this isn't just about having a financial safety net. Power and wealth actually change how the brain evaluates risk and reward, often leading to a dangerous combination of overconfidence and underestimation of potential negative consequences. Studies reveal that powerful individuals tend to focus more on potential rewards while becoming increasingly blind to potential dangers or downsides. This altered risk perception has broader implications for society, especially when we consider that many of our most important institutions and companies are led by individuals experiencing these psychological effects. The tendency to underestimate risks while overestimating personal ability to control outcomes can lead to decisions that put entire organizations, countries, or economies at risk. Additionally, this risk-taking behavior tends to escalate over time. As wealthy and powerful individuals experience success in taking risks, their threshold for what constitutes risky behavior shifts. Recent research reveals this isn't just a behavioral change, it's a fundamental shift in how their brain processes risk and reward signals. Power actually alters attention patterns during decision-making, making powerful individuals hyper-focused on potential rewards while becoming increasingly blind to warning signals. Actions that might seem reckless to others begin to feel normal or even conservative to them. This escalation can create a dangerous spiral where each successful risk encourages even more extreme risk-taking. Living in a bubble of wealth doesn't just isolate. It fundamentally alters perception. The constant presence of yes-men and the ability to shield oneself from consequences creates what researchers call a reality distortion. This isn't just about being out of touch. It's about developing a fundamentally different understanding of how the world works. In this altered reality, normal financial concerns become abstract concepts rather than lived experiences. The wealthy often lose the ability to understand or relate to common financial struggles, leading to tone-deaf statements about just borrowing money from your parents or cutting back on avocado toast to buy a house. This distortion extends beyond financial matters. Research shows that wealthy individuals often develop skewed perceptions of merit, fairness, and justice. They become more likely to attribute success to personal qualities and failure to external circumstance, but only when applying these judgments to themselves. For others, they often reverse this pattern. The bubble effect is particularly evident in how wealthy individuals process feedback. Surrounded by people who are economically dependent on them, they rarely receive genuine criticism or pushback against their ideas. Over time, this creates a form of learned omniscience, a belief that their intuitions and judgments are inherently superior to others. This psychological bubble also affects how wealthy individuals understand social problems and their solutions. Their isolated perspective often leads them to favor individualistic explanations for societal issues, overlooking systemic factors that they themselves have never experienced. Research reveals a troubling pattern. As people rise in socioeconomic status, they become less able to understand or empathize with others' mental health struggles. This extends beyond individual wealth to create society-wide impact. as the concentration of wealth in fewer hands leads to broader changes in how entire populations think about success, failure, and human worth. This can result in well-intentioned but fundamentally misguided attempts to address social problems through the lens of personal responsibility rather than systemic change. One of the most concerning aspects of extreme wealth and power is its relationship to authoritarian thinking patterns. Research shows a troubling pattern between accumulated wealth and the development of authoritarian tendencies. This isn't just about becoming more controlling, it's about fundamental changes in how wealthy individuals view democracy, equality, and human rights. Studies reveal that as wealth accumulates, individuals often develop what researchers call elite panic, a fear-based response to perceived threats to their status that can lead to increasingly authoritarian solutions. This manifests in various ways: supporting policies that restrict voting rights, opposing wealth distribution even when it would benefit society as a whole, and increasing belief in things that are eugenics or eugenics adjacent, racism increase, and favoring harsh responses to social unrest. The psychological mechanism behind this transformation is particularly interesting. As wealthy individuals become more isolated in their bubble, they often develop an exaggerated sense of threat from the general population. This perceived threat then justifies in their minds increasingly extreme measures to maintain control. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. The more wealth they accumulate, the more they feel they have to protect, and the more they support authoritarian measures to protect it. What's particularly troubling is how this mindset can spread beyond individual psychology to influence entire organizations and even societies. When wealthy individuals control major institutions, whether they're corporations, media outlets, governments, or political organizations, their authoritarian tendencies can shape these institutions' policies and culture. This institutional effect can then ripple throughout society, potentially eroding democratic norms and values. However, it's important to note that this progression is not inevitable. Research shows that wealthy individuals who maintain diverse social connections and actively engage with different socioeconomic groups are less likely to develop these authoritarian tendencies. This suggests that the key to preventing the authoritarian drift might lie in ensuring that wealth doesn't lead to complete social isolation. You can see two good examples of this drift in action right now in current events in the form of billionaire Mark Cuban versus billionaire Elon Musk, where Mark Cuban is founding organizations that help lower drug costs for the masses, and Elon Musk is doing, well, everything in the news that he's doing lately. While the evidence for wealth and power's corrupting influence is substantial, it's important to note that some individuals manage to resist these psychological changes. Research suggests that maintaining genuine connections with diverse groups and engaging in hands-on charitable work can help counteract these effects. We can see examples of this in leaders who maintain their empathy and connection to others despite their wealth. Women in particular seem to be more resistant to these negative changes. Take Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, who, upon her company's acquisition, gave every employee $10,000 and 2 first-class plane tickets. Or Melanie Perkins of Canva, who's maintained high-performance standards and profitability without resorting to mass layoffs, even during economic downturns. Sam Sales CEO Samantha McKenna exemplified this approach as well, maintaining a 12-month salary reserve at her company to protect employees from potential layoffs in 2025. These women are all running profitable multi-million or multi-billion-dollar companies while maintaining their humanity and connection to their workforce. Mackenzie Scott's approach to philanthropy provides another powerful example, demonstrating how wealth can be wielded with genuine humility and effectiveness when the psychological pitfalls are actively resisted. Research suggests several factors that might help explain why some wealthy individuals maintain better psychological balance. These include maintaining pre-wealth friendships, engaging in regular volunteer work that puts them in direct contact with people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and actively seeking out diverse perspectives in their decision-making processes. These positive examples provide valuable lessons about how wealth might be handled more responsibly. They suggest that the psychological pitfalls of wealth aren't inevitable, but rather require active work to avoid. The key seems to lie in maintaining authentic connections, remaining open to criticism, and regularly engaging with diverse perspectives. The psychological impact of extreme wealth concentration extends far beyond the wealthy themselves. Research shows that living in highly unequal societies shapes everyone's mind, creating widespread changes in how people think about success, failure, and human value. We're certainly seeing this today in the United States, where this podcast is recorded, where wealth inequality has reached levels comparable to those preceding the French Revolution. This isn't just an economic parallel, it's a psychological one as well. Studies show that such extreme inequality creates specific psychological conditions that make social upheaval more likely, as people's minds adapt to and eventually reject severe power imbalances. As we conclude today's exploration of how wealth and power reshape our minds, we're left with some profound questions about the future of our society. In a world where wealth inequality continues to grow, understanding these psychological effects becomes increasingly critical. The research we've discussed suggests that we need to be more mindful of these changes when designing corporate structures, tax policies, governments, and philanthropic initiatives. Perhaps more importantly, we need to consider how to help those in positions of power maintain their connection to humanity, although maybe that's not a problem we can solve. For those of us who aren't billionaires, their research offers valuable insights into human nature and the subtle ways power can change us all, even on a smaller scale. It reminds us to stay grounded, to maintain diverse connections, and to regularly check our own empathy and decision-making processes. Thanks for listening to this episode of PsyberSpace. I'm your host, Leslie Poston, signing off. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep exploring the mysteries of human behavior. And as always, stay curious.